and I am calling to order the meeting for the Commission on Diversity Awareness today, December 18th at 1:36 p.m. So I do have a conflict and will not be able to remain for the duration of the meeting. So if anybody would like to step in as the chair pro tem, that would be much appreciated.
Sure, I can do it. This is Commissioner Riesenberg.
Thank you so much for that, Commissioner Riesenberg. I'll let you go ahead and take over from here.
Would I be able to just to quickly get a motion in a second, then a quick voice vote on this, just so I can document it properly?
Yeah, I'll motion for that.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to lead, Chris, or would you like?
I think I would, because Commissioner Gebler is still technically the chair. She would need to call for a second and then a voice vote, and then once the motion passes, then we'll let you take over. Just want to get the Robert's rules down right, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so we need to call for a second for Commissioner Riesenberg to take over as chair pro tem for this meeting.
Commissioner Sanchez, I second.
Commissioner Gebler, all third.
Then if you could call for a quick voice vote, then I can,
Okay.
we'll go
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right. Shall I move to the roll call?
That would be great, yes.
All right. I have not been in charge before, so. Okay, I'm gonna call out the roll call, and if you are here, please speak up. Carolyn Kidd? Not present. Sandra Darling?
Here.
Manny Hernandez?
Here.
Tarang Jain? Not present. Mandy Martinez Gebler?
Present.
Myself, Mindy Riesenberg, present. Angelica Sanchez.
Present.
Wonderful. Would somebody like to read the mission statement and the land acknowledgement?
Commissioner Riesenberg,
This is
if I can
Commissioner
interject
Gebler.
briefly on before we move on to the next item here, I want to, because it's germane to this topic, I want to provide an update that I just got in the last hour, that Commissioner Jane has resigned from the commission. I will forward that email to you all, but I got that just about an hour ago, so I want to let you know that he is still on the agenda for today because it was published before that happened, but my understanding is that was effective immediately, so he will not be present for today's meeting.
I believe he sent it to all of us.
Oh, was it sent
I
all
received it as
of you?
well.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
I did.
If it
I did receive a copy of it as well.
Okay, fair enough. But I wanted to let you all know, if you hadn't seen that he received that about an hour ago. So he is no longer on our commission, though he appears on our agenda today. And that's all for me. Thanks.
All right, would somebody like to read the mission statement and land acknowledgement?
This is Commissioner Gebler. I can take that.
Wonderful.
Okay. We are commissioned to foster support, respect, awareness, and appreciation of diversity among all citizens of Flagstaff. And our land acknowledgement is: the Commission on Diversity Awareness humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous people. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. Now, are there any upcoming opportunities and announcements before we go to public comment?
I can quickly give an update on that, based on a conversation, or an email rather, I received just recently from Dr. Mallet, who confirmed that the MLK Day festivities in January will be led by the NAU Black Student Union. They asked for some of our help with a few things. They just want to help us publicize that event, get the word out for it a little bit. And we will be doing a proclamation for it as well. That'll come to us next month. It'll be the third Wednesday, which is right, I believe, before MLK Day. So I think we'll have just a few days to approve it before it goes to council. But because that is so close to that meeting, I wanted to give you all a heads up right now that I may be sending some information out in an email to you all before our next meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Any other opportunities or announcements?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and quick plug an event downtown. So coming up soon is our New Year's Eve Pinecone Drop. So it is a free family-friendly event available to anyone in the community. We'll have free games, crafts, apple cider. They'll have different community partners down there, like we'll have free axe throwing. So anyone in the community can come and attend. And there's no barriers for entry. So I think it's a great opportunity for our community. And looking forward to that. It should be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. with the Pinecone Drop at noon. So yeah, just a fun way for families to be involved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Any others? If not, I'm going to open this up now for public comment. If anybody has any comments, feel free to speak up now. I am not hearing or seeing anything, but Chris, are you?
I don't have any. I was not notified beforehand of any public comment.
Okay. Then we will move on from public comment to the approval of the last meeting's minutes. I'm assuming everybody has received a copy of the minutes.
Commissioner Sanchez here. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather today. I do have a correction under item 8B, updates from working groups. I said there would not be another update on the oral history project until it is approved by library administration, and the minutes say city administration. So if that could be moved over, as the only correction I had.
Thank you. I will make that correction.
Any other corrections? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
And second that motion after the edit.
Did somebody approve it first? Didn't hear.
Did someone make the first motion on that?
Yeah.
Or Commissioner Sanchez, was that a motion from you or was that a second?
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. And I thought the motion was already on the table. If it's not, I'm
No.
happy to make that
Okay.
motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. And anybody second?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. So moved. All right, moving on to action items, proclamations. I'm gonna assume that Chris is leading this section.
Yes. So I could pull up that that calendar that I have every time if you'd like, but I can also just be quick and tell you that we will have 2 proclamations for the commission next month in January. One will be for Black History Month, one will be for MLK Day. I'm going to get the language for those beforehand. I'll send them out to our groups. Probably Dr. Mallett will take a look at those and they will come to the commission for approval next month. That's really the only update there is to it. But if y'all would like to take a look at the calendar, I can pull it up as well.
Sounds like we're okay. All right. Reports and discussion items. So let's start with the Municipal Equality Index scorecard for 2024, which I believe Chris did attach to our agenda, correct?
Yes, I did. And this is my item. So I will go ahead and lead the discussion on this real quick, and let me quickly go ahead and change which screen I'm sharing to show you my presentation here. In the past, I've given the same presentation to council, and I think I gave it to this commission once, but I would like to start making that more of a standard thing I do each year. We did it last month, but with the way our meeting worked, we had that quick change of dates. It didn't quite work out perfectly. It was, oops, where am I at here? I'm showing the whole document, right? Not just the display view.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. I actually can't see what it's showing you right now. Is it showing you like the things on the side, or is it full screen?
It's
Right
full
now,
screen.
It is. Okay. Well, let's see where that is, and we'll go from there. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So anyways, this was published on the 21st of last month. And if you remember, we were originally going to meet on the 20th of the last month and moved it to the 26th. So it came in right between our two scheduled meeting dates last month. But this is an annual report put out by the Human Rights Campaign. We get a scorecard every year, as do a whole bunch of other cities. So I want to go through both that scorecard and give a short overview of what my office does as the city civil rights office, which is part of why I'm also the liaison for this commission. But it is a distinctly different role. So wanted to give you all a report on this so you have an idea what kind of activities happen and whatnot. And I'll take any questions as they come up, but I'll move through otherwise. So like I said, I'll start with talking about what our civil rights ordinance in the city of Flagstaff says, how we go through, or how my office goes through complaints when we receive them on this topic. And then I'll go through the scorecard and what it says, where we lose points and areas that we're looking to improve based on this scorecard in the future. So the city does have a civil rights ordinance. So the state has protections, and so does the federal government. But our local ordinance is a little bit more robust. So that's the one that I want to pay more attention to, because it's the one that's unique to our community. Our civil rights ordinance is really a non-discrimination ordinance. So it bars discrimination in a few different places. Employment, so you can't be discriminated by not being hired, being disciplined, or being fired. Labor organizations, and then public accommodations. And public accommodations is the other big one. And it's a whole bunch of different categories, but I best describe it by saying it's anywhere that you can walk into as a member of the general public and expect to receive services or to buy a product or anything like that. So if it's a hotel or a restaurant or anywhere that you expect to be able to conduct any kind of a transaction, that would be open to anyone in the public. There are a few organizations that are distinctly exempt from our ordinance, and there's some very specific cases. So it's Native American reservations or businesses near reservations. It's private clubs. So think of those as like fraternities or country clubs, things like that, where you usually have to pay a fee to be a member of something. The federal and state governments are exempt because our laws generally don't apply to them because they supersede us. Unruly behavior in public is kind of an easy one that makes you say that if you're claiming that you were discriminated on any of the protected classes, but it turns out that maybe you were kicked out of a restaurant or denied service somewhere because you were berating a staff member, then the first one doesn't apply anymore. You've given them just cause to take action on you for that action, distinctly separate from your association with that protected class. Religious organizations are exempt. There's a special exemption for things like senior and student discounts because age is a protected class, and there isn't anything unlawful about giving a student or a senior discount because it is treating people different based on age. One gender gymnasiums is one. And then uniform dress codes at work. There are instances where some types of businesses, for safety and other reasons, need to have uniforms their employees wear, and they're allowed to under state and federal laws. So we don't have the ability to supersede that. But so those are kind of the only exceptions to this, and they're all pretty specific cases and usually don't apply to most situations. But we wanted to cover that there are situations where the other rules don't apply. These are the city's protected classes. A lot of these may look very similar. Race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, veteran status, national origin are all very common. Those last three do not exist explicitly in state or federal protections. There is some case law that leads to interpretations of some of those. For example, some court cases have said that sexual orientation applies under sex, but not under its own right. That said, they are all explicitly mentioned in our local ordinance, so we don't need a federal or state court case to say that they apply. They are explicitly covered and defined in our local ordinance. And gender expression is one that is not seen very commonly that we have in ours. Yes, Commissioner Riesenberg.
I just have a question around that. Do you know how many other cities in the state of Arizona also protect sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression?
I don't specifically. Okay. Every ordinance is different, and once we get into the municipal quality index, I'll go through some of the ways that we're different from other cities. Some of them deal with which are protected classes, but it's also looked at to see what kinds of protections these classes have. So that there's kind of two sides of it. It's who's protected and what activities are protected. And so when you mix those two together, there's just a lot of different combinations that we have. And I don't really have hard data on how many of anything applies statewide. I've got some general ideas and I'll show those to you, but I don't have hard numbers. Sorry. So if somebody believes they've been unlawfully discriminated against, either in employment or public accommodation, they can file a complaint with our office. They tell us, I think I was kicked out of a restaurant for this reason, or I think X, Y, or Z. Our first step is to solicit a statement from the respondent. The respondent is the business that allegedly committed the offense. So we reach out to them and say, hey, we received a complaint against you that says that these things happened. They have, I believe, 45 days or 25 days to respond to us and tell us their side of the story, essentially. Then our office, once we have the original complaint and the response, we have kind of both sides of the story, we go through and we review for three things. Timeliness, to make sure that the complaint was filed on time. They have 180 days from the day of the alleged event to file it. And that's a change we made a couple of years ago. It used to be 90, but we doubled that case at that time because 90 is pretty short, and it was actually shorter than the state and federal government allow in their complaint process. So we doubled that time to give folks that have been victims of discrimination longer to excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me. We wanted to give them longer to file because, if this does happen, it can be an emotional thing for people and it takes them a while to get to a point where they're ready to talk about it. But also because 90 days is just pretty short to get some of these things together. So it's now 180. So really just checking a box, is it filed within 180 days, yes or no? Second one is, are we the right jurisdiction for this? So if this happened outside the city of Flagstaff, we're not the right jurisdiction. If its allegation is something that's not in our ordinance, we're not really the right jurisdiction. And then the last one is the content. If this is true, without determining whether or not it actually happened, is the complaint this person's making, like if we just assume that it's true under any circumstance, would it be a violation of our ordinance? And if all three of those things are met, if we say that it's filed on time, we're the right people to file it with, and yes, this allegation would be a violation if it's true, we go through a process of trying to figure it out. If any of those fail that test, the complaint is dismissed. We say, we're sorry, but we can't help you for one of those reasons. And that's the end of it. That's that red square in the bottom there. If we think it could be truer and all those things are met, we go to mediation. So essentially we try to get the respondent and the complainant and the claimants in the same room to discuss what happened. They may be asking for financial compensation. They may be asking for training of staff. They can kind of ask for whatever they want as their relief. And we just begin with that conversation. We say, hey, you're saying that this happened. You're saying this happened. You're saying you want this. Let's try to resolve it. Obviously, we'd love to get an agreement there. That's the best case outcome. That's the green box on the right there. That's what we're hoping for. But if that fails, if they cannot reach an agreement, then we go to an investigator. And under our city's policies, the investigator is actually me again. We hire the mediation out with someone else, but the investigation comes back to our office. That's when we look at the facts of the case. Did it happen? What, is there a cause for things? We do the actual substance of trying to figure out what did occur and what did not occur. If we think the claimant is right and they, the person that's responsible didn't want to appease them or they couldn't reach a deal, then we go to city court. We go to the big guys with the robes, let them hash it out because we were unable to do so. If we determine that, this isn't correct, we don't find it in the claimant's favor, then we can dismiss the case as well. So that's our full process. It's designed to allow for flexibility, because these are not the kind of things where you can say, oh, well, this much money was lost, so that's the easy solution is just this much money plus whatever percent. They're really complex. So we try to treat them with that level of subjectivity that allows us to get to a resolution that meets everyone's best interest. That's what happens when these cases come about. Commissioner Hernandez, yes.
You can let me know if you're going to get into this later, but I just wanted to know the data on how often things get to each step.
Yeah, so I've been with the city for, I think, 4 years now, either 3.5 or 4.5 years. I can't remember the math exactly. And I've gotten about half a dozen cases that were filed. And I've only ever had one case get to mediation. That was a case earlier this year that was more complex. And it got all the way to near the end of that process. It was a difficult one, but usually when I get cases, I'll say that a majority of times that I have seen them, I have been able to dismiss them at that first step. They're generally not filed under. It doesn't usually meet that 3-step check, but that doesn't mean to say that never happens. And we want the process to work for those cases when there is a legitimate case. So that's what the process is built for. And we will go through as many cases where we have to dismiss them as it takes to make sure that the process works for those cases where it doesn't. It's pretty rare though.
Gotcha. And are these cases public?
We keep records on them, and they would be subject to a public records request if anybody requested them, but we don't actively publish the data anywhere or anything. If we get a case, we don't publicize that a business was filed against. Even at the resolution, we don't put out a press release or anything. We, but just like anything else we do, it would be a public record if anyone requested it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So that's our ordinance and the structures we have at the city in a broad stroke. So based on all those kinds of things, we get a scorecard for the Municipal Quality Index every year. This is a document that's published every year in November, December-ish, where they evaluate the ordinances, the policies, the laws, and the services that are provided by cities all across the nation. They're looking for how well we promote equality on the basis of gender orientation and sexual orientation and gender identity. Those two ones that are covered under our local ordinance. And it's the Human Rights Campaign, which if you don't know about them, they're a large national organization that advocates for more protections for these kinds of classes. They evaluate over 500 cities every year. 11 of them are in Arizona. And I have data for some of the other cities in Arizona. I shared that with y'all in case you wanted to look at the spreadsheet. It was a little more complex and more granular than I'll probably show on the screen, but we can talk about it as well. So you can get 100 points, but really you can get 122 points because they have 22, they call them flex points. And I've been doing this for many years. I don't fundamentally know how those flex points are different, aside from the fact that they stop counting at 100. So if you get 108, you still get 100. They do it in 5 categories. So they look at your laws, so your ordinance. They look at the way the city would treat its employers, or its employees, rather. They look at the services provided to the community. There's a whole separate section for law enforcement in our police department. And then they look at initiatives taken by our city leadership. So that would include largely our city council and our city administration, but could also include areas like you all on the Commission on Diversity Awareness. You are part of city leadership in that regard. So for 2024, we received a 95 out of 100, which is pretty good, but it's not as good as it can be. So the breakdown amongst those 5 sections is in this table right here, where you can see, and I'll get to that in a second, Commissioner Sanchez. That's on a future slide, and I'll talk about the efforts we've taken as well. So from last year, we got the same point. It was 95, but we gained a point and we lost a point somewhere else. So they canceled each other out, and we're still at 95. We gained 1 additional point for things we've done as an employer, and we lost 1 point under the leadership idea. And I'll go through exactly what those were. So we're at 95, but really we're at 81 out of 100 plus 14 of the 22 flex points. That's how the math adds up. Here is our history of Flagstaff score. So back in 2016, we were only at about a 65. Then we had a pretty good submission back in 2018. That was before I was with the city. We got to 88, and we sat at 88 for several years. 5 consecutive years, we got that same score. I'll note that in that time, there were instances where we gained and lost points. They just happened to be canceled out, just like it was this year. But we sat there, and then until last year in 2023, when we got 7 additional points and got to 95, and this is our 2nd consecutive year being at a 95. So here are the biggest here's all the areas really that we lose points that we could otherwise get. And I'll go through each of these individually, but it's under it's not having housing in our non-discrimination ordinance. It's our single occupancy, all gender facilities. It's transgender and inclusive healthcare benefits for employees. It's the way our non-discrimination ordinance is enforced. It's the lack of a youth bullying prevention policy. We lose some points for leadership's pro-equality efforts. We lose points for having an openly LGBTQ elected or appointed leader. And I have a note next to this one because this one's a very unique one. And I want to talk about this one once we get there because it was an area that council really honed down last year. And then we lost points for not testing the limits of some restrictive state laws. And I'll talk about each of these individually. But I also wanted to highlight some key areas that we do receive points, not just focus on the negative. So here's some areas that we've, especially in the last few years, gained points and are doing good by our community. So the first I'm going to talk about, and I'll talk about this again more, is the transgender inclusive healthcare benefits. And yes, it is on both of those 2 screens because this is an area that we did a lot of work over the last year, and we do get 1 point. And I'll talk about why that 1 point is important later on. But a lot of these are other services we provide. And these are areas that a lot of other cities don't get credit for. And it's areas that we have just started getting credit for in the last couple of years because we've documented these programs really well, and they're good programs that matter for our community. So providing services to the LGBTQ plus youth, providing services to LGBTQ plus people experiencing homelessness, that's largely through our housing department, providing services to LGBTQ older adults specifically, providing services to people with HIV or AIDS, and that's through the city's health department, and then providing services to the transgender community holistically. And most of these are through either housing, our public health team, or our library programs. So they're all areas that we have documented really well over the last couple of years and really organized and been able to make a strong case for to get new points on this scorecard. Anyways, okay, there's a lot of content. So again, feel free to raise your hand if I'm going too quick here. But The biggest area that we lose points, we lose 10 points for this one, and it's for not having housing included in our non-discrimination ordinance. And unfortunately, there is nothing we can do about this. As I said, our non-discrimination ordinance covers public accommodations and it covers employment, but it does not cover housing. Only a few cities in Arizona receive the full points for this item. And the problem is, under state law, we're not allowed to. They have a law that was actually a law from the 90s that allowed only cities that had populations over 350,000 to add this to their NDOs or to adopt other fair housing ordinance under their housing ordinance. And they had to do it before 1995. So we wouldn't have been eligible back when this happened 30 years ago. And even if we were, that window closed on us 30 years ago, and we've been preempted ever since. So there's just nothing that we can do to get these 10 points without the state changing that state law. So unfortunately, under possible action, there's just nothing that we can do. Now, our single occupancy, all gender facilities. Some of you may remember that this commission actually worked on this project a couple of years ago, and that is where we got the 1 out of the 2 points. So based on a recommendation from this commission, back about 3 years ago, City Council gave direction to require, all gender facilities in every city-owned building. So that gave us 1 of the 2 points. The way we could get the second point, it would be to require it in every building across the city. We kind of require it. We adopted a 2018 version of the International Building Code, which essentially says that any new building that's built or updated to a certain extent will have to include these in order to comply with that code. I've made the case that that should include that should get us that second point to the Human Rights Campaign. They said without an ordinance specifically requiring it, they will not give us the second point. So it's an area where we are doing pretty well by our community. And especially as buildings are built and updated, we're going to see these phased in, but we don't get the second point. And I also want to note on this that this scorecard is one tool to evaluate how well we're doing for our community. And just because we don't receive a point doesn't mean that we're not standing by our community and doing the right things. So I want to make that point, because on something like this, we are doing a pretty good job of it, and we will start to see tangible results from it, even if we don't get the second point. So this third one is providing transgender inclusive healthcare benefits, and we get 1 out of 6 points for this one. And I want to highlight this one because this is an area that that me and a couple other members of the city staff did a lot of work on over the last 12 months. We really hounded Blue Cross Blue Shield, who provides our healthcare, to get them to put the benefits that our city staff are eligible for into our plan books. And after a few years of pestering them, they finally agreed. So we got that language into our plan books, which was a huge win for us because it communicates to all the city employees that these benefits do exist. And I want to harp that these benefits do exist. Employees of the city of Flagstaff are able to access all kinds of gender affirming care through our healthcare. However, we lost 5 out of 6 points for this because there is a state law that says that we cannot use gender affirming care, or that kind of healthcare cannot be provided to minors. And when they gave me this explanation back in the fall, I will tell you that I had quite the debate with them over whether those should be included, because very few of our benefit eligible employees at the city of Flagstaff, we have almost 1,000 employees, very few of them are under the age of 18, which means that the vast majority of employees are eligible for this kind of care. Their dependents are eligible for the care, but just because some of them may have minor children that are under the age of 18 that could not access this care, the Human Rights Campaign said that it's only worth 1 out of 6 points. And again, I thought that as hard as I could. Personally, I disagree with that assessment. I think that when 99.9% of people that are covered under a city healthcare plan have access to it, that only getting 1 out of 6 points seems a bit low to me. They were not swayed, and it was a standard they applied to other cities throughout Arizona. So I want to let you all know that that's the way it worked. And I was really hoping that we'd get all 6 points for this, but that's the reason we didn't. And another example of an area where we are doing well to provide these services and the points may not reflect that. In any case, there's nothing else we can do to get those additional 5 points until that state preemption goes away. Okay, so okay, and fair enough, Commissioner Darling. Yeah. So we lose 2 points because the non-discrimination ordinance is not enforced by you all as the Commission on Diversity Awareness. It's enforced through my office, the Civil Rights Office, which is a part of the City Manager's office, but I don't report directly to you in that function. That's to say that you all don't have the authority to direct my activities when I enforce the ordinance. The existence of this commission does give us points elsewhere on the scorecard. Just having a commission on diversity awareness gives us 2 points, but they want to see you all with that authority. I can say our city administration and our city council have not wanted to give CODA that authority because it would be out of line with the goal of most of our commissions, which are advisory and educational. I want to always be forthcoming with CODA on our activities and give you information as you see fit, but our administration has not thus far been interested in giving you all that authority to enforce the ordinance. The way we could get these points would be to change that. So that's what I say is that staff and legal research could look into the possibility of giving you that authority, although it would be fairly unprecedented based on how other commissions are run. The youth prevention policy for city services. I came to you all a few months ago over the summer and gave you an update on our endeavors to make this a reality. We've been working with our library, we're working with our pros team, our sustainability on drafting a citywide policy on this. Our ambitions have been pretty high for it. We want to make this not just something that requires all the programs to do it, but we want to actually create a citywide anti-bullying policy that would apply to adults as well, because we know that even if you're above the age of 18, you can face harassment and bullying, and we don't want to have that be a factor. We've been looking at this, and it's just been a bit slow getting going. We're really hoping that we can have this done the next year. It's certainly a priority of mine before next summer. So it's something we're looking at, and it's probably the #1 area that we're looking to add for next year. So we're getting into the last couple here. The first one is the leadership's pro-equality legislative or policy efforts. And this is, it's essentially based off what city council does. It's based off the laws they propose, the statements they make in the public eye. Last year, we got 2 out of 3 points for this. I don't know why we lost a point for it, I'll be honest. We submit every year, we try to submit examples of our city council supporting these things. But it's subjective, and it's up to the Human Rights Campaign how many points they give us. They didn't really respond with why we got 1 out of 3. They just kind of said it's subjective. So we're going to continue to document those kind of things well and do the best we can to make a case for this. But it is kind of up to our city council, and it's up to how well those things get published or publicized. Finally, we're down to our last 2 here. Having an openly LGBTQ+ elected or appointed city leader. We're at 0 out of 2 on this one. We lost these 2 points beginning last year in 2023. We used to get both of these points. And I will tell you that it was surprising to lose these points in 2023 because we did not have any change to our city administration or our city council between 2022 and 2023. There was nobody that left the organization that we think would have fit this role. So we reached out to ask why we lost these points all of a sudden. And I'll note as well that we do have LGBTQ+ members that are appointed or elected in the city. However, we are not going to collect that information and documentation from them. We're not going to go around asking city staff to out themselves for these points. It is just not the right way to go about it. And our city council expressed concerns over the way these points are given. So essentially, our city council kind of said that they're fine not getting these 2 points for the meantime because they don't like the way that it kind of encourages us to document the sexual orientation of our city staff or elected officials. So we're not going to do that. And if any of those individuals feel compelled to make those statements for themselves, they are welcome to. But we, as part of our process for submitting for this scorecard, we are not going to do any kind of active recruiting or attempt to document this outside of what people are comfortable with themselves. And that's what we've decided is the best way to go about it with these points. So until anybody that's in one of those positions would like to do that, we're not going to, as city staff, we're not going to take any action to encourage it or to try to force it from people to make them do things that they're not comfortable doing. It's up to them. And in the meantime, we're going to be an inclusive workplace. We're going to provide a comfortable work environment for everybody, but we're not going to go through and attempt to actively document this. That's kind of our stance on this. And then finally, our last one is testing limits of restrictive state laws. And I've mentioned a few areas where we lose points because our state government has passed laws that stop us from doing things. This essentially, these 3 points are kind of a carrot that the Human Rights Campaign dangles in front of some cities to attempt to see how far we can go to challenge those laws. And our city attorney's office has kind of said that, we're not really interested in creating lawsuits over this just for the sake of creating lawsuits. So for that reason, we don't receive these 3 points. I think there was one city in Arizona that did get them, and I didn't go through and look at what ways they're doing that. But unless we were to attempt to just pass laws anyways and hope the state government sues us or sue the state government, we would not get these 3 points. And that is a sum of all of the areas that we lose points on this scorecard. And I hope I've done a good job of explaining how those interact with the actual service we provide and the actual laws that we have for our city. That is the end of the presentation on these 2 items. So I've been talking nonstop for quite some time, and I'd love to open it up to see if any of you have any questions or comments or concerns about what I've presented. Thank you.
Rose before me.
Thank you, Chris. I was just listening to some of your presentation on the process for filing a complaint. Would you be able to tell me or tell us where CCC or NAU falls on that? Is that is that something that city takes up, or do they go under the state?
Do you mean if the community college or NAU were to be the alleged offending party, the respondent?
Right.
I believe that both of them are considered state entities. So any complaint would have to go to the state government. That said, if that were to happen and they filed with our office, we would go through the process to receive a response from that entity. And then I would probably have to consult our city attorney's office to see whether or not it met that 3 criteria and whether we were the right jurisdiction for that complaint. If we're not, I would direct them to probably the state attorney general's office. But if we were, we would continue with it. I just don't know off the top of my head whether or not we are the right entity for that.
I have a question.
Yeah,
This
go
is
ahead,
Commissioner
Commissioner
Riesenberg. What are the repercussions of this? If you're not getting the points, how does this affect the city?
Well, that's a great question. So this is meant to be kind of, I think the intended audience for this is broad. It's meant to be a document we can use to evaluate our own policies and services we provide. And that's the way we use it. We try to use this every year to go through and look at how well we're doing at providing these services and protecting people under our laws. But I think it's also meant to be kind of a way to publish how well cities broadly are doing at this. So if you're a member of one of these classes, you can have an idea what communities might be more inclusive to you, or that you might be safer in or things like that. So it's fairly broad. We don't have any money tied to this or anything. If we do poorly, we don't like lose any funding for it or anything, but we try to do our best to use it to evaluate, kind of do a self-assessment of where we're at. And this is an organization that is trying to advocate for the best interest of these communities. So we want to listen to their concerns as well, whether or not we agree with all of their specific points.
Like we have a question from Martin.
Yes. Excuse me. I'm sorry as I'm trying to sit here and figure out how to do all these things. Would you be able to, or is that a report that you would be able to discuss with the Pride Board?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd be happy to.
And just I thought that was some really interesting and valuable information. I know that we have advocated for and talked to some of the shelters when it has come to housing some of those who are identified as transgender, and there were some issues and concerns with a couple of them in regards to verifying and proving whether one is transgender. And I think it may have changed for one of them, but I'm not sure about the others. But that would just be some good information for us to know, and ways in which we might be able to partner or help bring about some of that information, so we can raise those numbers and get back on a positive, view of the city.
Absolutely. And I'll note that this would only apply to any of the shelters that receive funds from the city. So if any operate on their own financially, they would not be included in this, but we document each year for those points on that item that we provide funds to local nonprofits that provide that service for LGBTQ folks experiencing homelessness and the transgender community. And I can say that specifically some of the areas we've gotten points for are with like Sharon's Manor, who has studio apartments that are non-gendered based on a renovation they did a couple years ago. So we helped pay for that renovation a few years ago, and then we continue to pay for their continued operations, which gives folks that may not identify on the gender binary or under any other sexual orientation or type thing, it gives them a safe place no matter where they fall on that spectrum.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you. Please send me an email and I'll be happy
Okay.
to speak to the Pride Board on it.
Sounds good.
Any further questions? Sandra.
I just wonder if it's not appropriate to elaborate on my comment. I didn't want it to seem like a jab. I think it's probably important to recognize that in the context here with the transgender inclusive healthcare benefits, when you speak to this would help 99%, I think that falls on the side of the greater good. And when we're talking about civil rights, we're really looking at like an equity lens is maybe the appropriate way to say that, and so that those services are available to those who need it the most. Like it's a lot of groups use the phrase, it's not all of us or none of us. And I think that's relevant here. If it's not available to everyone, then it's kind of doesn't count. And that's what it feels like to those affected. And I think that was what I meant. Thanks for letting me elaborate.
And Commissioner Darling, thank you for sharing as well. And I in my explanation for this point, I did not mean to come off as hostile or anything else towards the way it's been assessed to us. I was trying to give an explanation of what I thought was good work that we've done on the topic, and an improvement, not to say that the issue is solved or that it doesn't exist anymore, but wanted to draw attention to progress where I felt it was made.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Martin, you still have your hand up, so I didn't know if you have another question. Okay.
Nope, I thought I took it down. Sorry.
Oh, Kara's here. Commissioner House. Super, well.
Yeah. My apologies for being late. And Chris, I can check in with you after the meeting or just go back and watch the recording. I just wanted to quickly hear, overall, did we do better or worse this year than last year?
Thank you. And Councilwoman House, we ended up with the same score. We lost 1 point and we gained 1 point, so they cancel each other out.
Okay.
And I will also, I think I'm set to give this same presentation to council. I think it's maybe January 28th, but near the end of January, I will be at council with the same information.
Okay. Do you happen, or did you review, I know there was the point that I had made during last year's conversation about a particular point that I refuted that we lost. Did we get that back or have we, or no?
No, we did not. And I made that argument to the Human Rights Campaign. We had a discussion about it. I expressed the feelings about the way that point was assessed, and they told me they kind of said, thank you for letting us know. And that was kind of the end of it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Appreciate it. That was very interesting. Moving on to our next discussion item, anti-camping ordinance and enforcement.
Yes. And I think I'll be dominating the conversation a little more than usual today because most of these are things I'm going to be reporting on. I think most of the other ones that are remaining will be more discussions though. So on this item, I wanted to let you all know that I know it's been on the front of the commission's mind for several months since the summer, and I've been trying to gather information to bring back to you all so that our conversation can be informed before I agendize it again. And a few weeks ago on December 5th, I had a meeting with the chief of our police department, a deputy chief that's in charge of the operations division, and one of our members of our city or of our attorney's office that represents the police department. So I started by giving a bit of a background on my role with the commission and my role as the civil rights liaison for the city, because as you may know, our chief of police is also new. I think that he started about a week before this case happened. So trying to create that relationship with him as well, and let him know what our interest on this topic is, and everything. So what they expressed to us is that essentially they have not given any direction to their officers to change their enforcement policy since this change in the court hearings. There's been nothing written, so there's no written policy that I can share with you on it because nothing has changed. The direction that they're given through training is an education and service first approach, where they try to they talk to folks, they try to inform them of our ordinance, they try to connect them with services where they can, and our CARES unit comes into this. If you know about that service, where if there's folks that need social services, we have the ability to provide them kind of with that initial response that is usually led by a police officer. We can send a social worker out with them that can connect them to whether it's services for being unhoused or substance abuse or mental health or whatever it may be. They can try to make that the first contact point. So that's still the way it's being enforced. The only difference at all is that they are not required to make a phone call to the shelter as a part of this process anymore. And that was something that they've always done is, if someone needs a bed for the night, they will call the shelter and see if there are beds available. My understanding is that they have not really been given any change of direction not to do that anymore, but they're not required to under the ordinance anymore. That's the only change legally that happened with the court case of Johnson Bruce Grants Pass. And our police chief also wanted to really harp on the fact that we do not have any kind of camp busting program in the city, and they have no plans of creating one. So they do not intend to go in and begin impounding property or clearing out of folks if they're in one area. So that's not a part of our plan, our policy, and he does not expect it to become one at any point in the foreseeable future. He also wanted to note that that one of the things he's doing as he comes in as the police chief is to create a comprehensive crime reduction plan that he's hoping will be published by early next year. And that would include areas like our unhoused community and its relation to substance abuse, mental health, poverty, and all of the other underlying factors. So those will all be included in that report. I don't have a copy of it yet, but I'll keep an eye on that early next year when it comes out. He also expressed that his thoughts that our community needs more beds in its shelters and in its care facilities, and that's something that he hopes to advocate for in the years going forward. And the last item he had is that he actually wanted to make himself available to you all. So at our next meeting in January, I invited him to that, and he put it on his schedule and is attempting to make that so that he can introduce himself to you all and that you can have a chance to ask any questions you have of him on this topic or any other topics. He wasn't able to make this month, but my thought on the matter was that if you all have a chance to have your own discussion on this first and to think about any questions you might have over the next month, it'll give you a little bit of time to do that before he shows up in January, so that we're prepared to have that discussion. It's not something that just is thrust upon you without you knowing beforehand. And I saw a question from Councilwoman House here. Let's see. I don't know the answer to that question. We can certainly ask about that, though. I can't speak on his behalf because I didn't ask him that question when I have it in front of me. And the question, because I know it won't be on the recording, was would the police department be willing to have that plan reviewed by commissions before it's published? And we can reach out to see the answer about that. So any questions or discussion from the commission on this now, I guess?
If there are no questions, we will move on to the rainbow pavement exhibit.
Okay, thank you. And once again, this will be a short update from me, and I think there may be some discussion after this one. So we talked about this last month, and it was raised that there may be another group at the city that is working on this project or has taken it up in the last little bit of time. And that was based on a meeting, I believe, that happened perhaps in the mayor's office a month or two ago. And so I reached out to a few different folks at the city and a few folks that were at that meeting. And what I could tell was that topic came up in a meeting. I think that Councilwoman Sweet was a part of it. And I'm not sure who mentioned, but someone mentioned work that was being done previously. But it was work. It was work that was done about 3 years ago, actually 2 administrations ago, back when Mayor Deasy was in office. There was some talk about this, and that is what was discussed in that meeting. So I confirmed with the other commission that was mentioned, the Arts and Beautification Commission, and I asked them, are you guys working on this right now? What has been the update? And they kind of said, well, we worked on it 3 years ago, but don't have anything going right now. So I can report to you all that I'm fairly confident that there is not another group that is taking this right now, that is working on this. and that if we want to continue working on this project, that it probably is appropriate for us to continue working on it because I've talked to members of council, I've talked to other staff liaisons, and I do not believe that anyone else is actively working on it right now. That's the update I have for you.
Commissioner Darling?
So we understood that the beautification team was working on it, or council, and that's not it.
Correct. They were working on it about 3 years ago, I want to say, and then that work kind of stopped. But because they were working on it in the past, I think somebody thought they may still be doing it. And after talking with their staff liaison, she confirmed to me that they are not actively working on that project.
Okay. Just had a post on social media today about someone who said they're working on this project and asking for design input.
Do you have that post perhaps, or are you able to tell me where that post came from?
Yeah, it's from the Flagstaff LGBT, one of those groups.
Okay.
It's been Nicholas with the Flagstaff Queer Collective, who I think was part of that meeting with the newer organization, and the mayor just posts the election results regarding the sanctuary city conversation, which is where we heard that this had come out of. And so we're just trying to figure out how we can support that, or we have materials that Pride had worked on last year and presented. Can we share those? Can we support? Should Pride be working on this? Those are some of our many questions. Dr. Tees probably has a few more.
Well, I do, and I think that I mean it's one of those that is this something that all parties can come together on, and so that it's more of a group collective per se versus one area, and then if so, how do we do so without trampling on the toes per se of any group that may have taken the lead? And I think that's kind of where maybe the confusion for me came in, is that I was not aware that the Flagstaff Queer Collective or any other group was participating in this conversation with the crosswalk, or even the conversation that happened that you mentioned with the mayor's office. So I'm just wondering how we can coordinate all the groups together and then find out who wants to do what and how we can get this taken care of.
Councilwoman House, do you have a question?
Yeah, or more of a comment. So thank you, Sandra, for bringing that up about the post. I hadn't seen that either. So would like to get caught up on that part of the conversation. I know Flag Pride has been working on this for so long. My main goal has been to ensure that, excuse me, they remain part of the conversation, and that this isn't something that is just taken up and brought over the finish line, so to speak, by any group that doesn't involve Flagstaff Pride. I know from that meeting, and I actually just had a chance to speak about this with Councilmember Sweet yesterday. The reference had been made to BPAC working on this, and it sounds like that was maybe a miscommunication of the fact that they had worked on it in the past, but nothing new was moving forward. It sounds like if it got brought back up again recently, they were kind of at the same place that CODA has come to with the comments back from the engineering standards being the main thing that stands in the way of that. I think what that means is it may be beneficial to set up a joint meeting or a conversation with some of the different groups that are interested in this to be able to ensure that all groups are at the table, first of all, for a shared conversation, and looking at, I think the next steps from CODA's perspective was that if we wanted to keep going with this, it would be something that we would look at as being more of a shared like council initiative, where even though we've been told by the engineering standards that it doesn't adhere to those, it could still be brought forward as either a recommendation from CODA to consider this, or a direct recommendation from a member of council. And I know I had expressed willingness to be that member of council to say, I'd like us to consider this. We are going to be on break as council for the next couple of weeks for the holidays, but we come back on January 7th. So maybe if we wanted to try and coordinate something between January and February, it would be something that we could bring up with several months in between before Pride 2025, to at least move the conversation forward, even if it wasn't ultimately completed by Pride Month, at least to have reinitiated that conversation from the council level. So I'd just like to be part of supporting any conversations that happen there to be able to move this forward, and take any approach that we would want or need to try and make something happen.
And I guess Councilwoman House, is that something that we should be reaching out to you and CODA for as a contact from the commission and the city council?
I would look to Chris for guidance on that. I think probably coordinating with Chris for CODA involvement in the conversation, and then probably you could just include me as a CC on that message.
Mhm.
But Chris, do you have any guidance on?
Yeah, so I think that the next steps on this project will be to identify a suggested location and then a funding source. And once we have those two, we can look at the design and all those kinds of things. But if there is a different group in the community besides Flag Pride, whether that's the Queer Coalition or anybody else, we want to bring them into the conversation, we can do that. There's kind of two avenues forward, I think. Either we could put this on an agenda again in January and try to have Martin, either you or someone else or other folks from Flag Pride present, as many members of the board as you would like, and any other groups present as well. Just try to have that, have our next meeting of this commission be that large conversation between all the different entities that want to be involved. Or you all, as the non-city entities, could get together on your own time if you want to schedule a time when your boards can meet or something to that effect. Then come to us as the city for support. We could do that as well. So I think that we could either all be kind of the same, it could be party A, party B, party C, party D, whatever, all in the same room, or all of you could kind of be in your own pool with us here, and we'll try to talk to all of you collectively, whatever communication way best suits you all. I know that the speed of public bodies like this works a little bit differently than nonprofit, even, but still private organizations that don't have to hold meetings with agendas and public comment and all that kind of thing. So either way is okay with me. We can organize that for January. We have to be a little more rigid because we are a public, this is a public meeting, and you all would not have that stipulation. We want to work with y'all, and we'll do it in either capacity, I think.
Okay.
Any further?
Any initial thoughts on which of those maybe work best for you guys at Flag Pride, or maybe would work best for them if you have a thought?
It sounds to me, and I'll just say my part, and then if Commissioner Darling wants to chime in too, I think it would be a great way for us all to figure out um, who the different groups are that are interested, have that probably impromptu meeting to discuss the ways in which we can come together, and then also engage and involve CODA and the city council or whomever at that level that would be available. And so I think that's kind of our first move. And then I'm sorry, I was trying to look at my notes to see if we had a time frame when we were trying to get this accomplished or done, but I definitely have in my notes to go back over to discuss location and funding sources.
So I know it was mentioned a previous month that it'd be great if we could get this done before June of next year, because of, that's when Pride will be happening.
Mhm.
I can't, I could only speculate right now as to whether that timeline is possible or not. But I can say that, we can do what we can do. And
Mhm.
if we start working on it now, there is a better chance that we can do that
Yeah.
than there would be if we wait months to start. That's as much as I can say, is that we can go as fast as we can, but I can't speculate more than that, really.
Well, the cool thing would be is that Pride celebrates 30 years in 2026. So if we can get it by, next June, that's great. But then I think if we really had it by June 2026, when we celebrate 30 years, that would be, awesome.
Absolutely.
So I'll clarify that to move forward in the best way, Pride should come back with a potential funding source as well as a location. And if there are other interested parties, they'll be directed to come here or invited to come here, but nobody knows of any except that one guy I saw on Facebook.
And that was Ben. Was that Ben Nichols?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
Ben. So I'm not sure if they're working with someone else that inspired this. Obviously someone else is talking about it. That's why it keeps coming to that, but I'm not really sure how to make those connections since we don't seem to know who may have been talking about it.
And I'm sorry, was it Councilwoman Sweet that was in the initial conversation with the mayor that they recently had?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So I'm
Yes,
wondering
it was myself, Councilmember Sweet, and Mayor.
Oh, cool. Well, then, Councilwoman House, let's connect. Let's connect and have a conversation about best steps then to reach out to the other groups to find out what was said or not said and how we can work together.
Sounds
If
good.
that's okay. Okay.
Wonderful.
And then what I need from the commission, I think, on this is just a definitive direction from you all. And this doesn't have to be a vote or anything, but if you just tell me what you'd like me to do, on whether it should remain an item for the next agenda, and if you would like me to do any outreach on behalf of the commission to any other specific groups or entities that may want to be involved in this. And Martin, your organization's welcome to do that as well, to make that contact. It can be through you, or it can be through us. It just, if I'm going to reach out to anyone else, I need the commission to direct me to do so. I'm happy to. I just want to let you all know that that's what I would need.
And what does that look like? Can I make that request that you bring those parties to the table? And do we vote on it?
There's no vote necessary. If all of you just, give a thumbs up or something like that, that would work. I would need to know who those individuals are. If you tell me that Mr. Nichols is someone you want me to reach out to, I can try to do that. If there's anyone else, if you know who they are, that helps me a lot, because otherwise I'm just kind of shooting in the dark for who to bring into it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's just kind of like somebody said they were working on it and maybe they weren't. So I'm not sure, but I did see a post from Ben Nicholas today. And so maybe he has some more information and maybe Martin and Councilwoman House can pull together some more information too. It's in no way a fight to the finish line. It takes a village, and we just want to make sure we're all working together to get to that end goal
Mhm.
of a beautiful rainbow crosswalk in Flagstaff.
Right?
Absolutely. Wait, is that Mr. Nicholas or Nichols?
I think
I
it's
think it's
been
Nichols.
Nicholas.
Was it Nicholas? Okay, maybe I'm saying it wrong. Sorry.
I'm not familiar with that name, so I want to make sure I get it right. And he's with the is it the Flagstaff Queer Coalition? Is that the name of the group?
We're collective.
Queer Collective. Okay. And it is Nicholas, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
I will try to find him and reach out to him about it. And then last thing is, are there any other groups in the community that anyone thinks may be worth contacting? Just that if you know about them and want to try to bring them into the conversation so that I know to reach out to them or try to find them.
If I come across names, can I direct them to you?
Yeah, you can send me an
Thank
email
you.
with a contact and I'm happy to follow up for you.
And I would say something similar as well, or if not, whomever Councilwoman House and Councilwoman Sweet met with the mayor. I believe I don't know that was Flagstaff Queer Collective, but if it was or was not, I'm wondering if those names should be engaged and involved with as well.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I believe Ben was part of that conversation as well as Joan, and I apologize, I don't remember their last name, but they are part of the Arizona Progressive Action community. So that was the other primary group that I recall being part of that conversation.
Okay.
And would Sean Johnson have contact information for the folks that were in that meeting?
I believe so.
Okay, I will reach out to him and then I will follow up with those individuals to let them know that we're trying to get everyone on the same page and that we would like them to be involved in the conversation. And then would the commission like this to remain on the agenda for January? If we can meet on that day to continue the discussion. I'm seeing some head nods. Okay. I think I have my direction. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that? We'll do the updates from the working groups next.
Alrighty. So a quick update on the library working group. Last month I shared we had a lot of irons in the fire. Felicia is working on proposals for another name change clinic, drag story hour, and we were working on getting the oral history collection up and running. Unfortunately, we did hear back and the outcomes weren't necessarily what we expected. So first up is the name change clinic. Although I did share that it was really well attended in October with up to 40 people, they did request some changes. So even though this is just an information session and it would be appropriate for teenagers, the library is concerned about alienating audiences. So they removed things like pride in your community. The banner's got to be removed from all advertisements, and it will not be on the young adult calendar event. Next up was Drag Story Hour. So I mentioned last month that Felicia was submitting a programming proposal for it. The proposal was denied. And the library has actually enacted a new policy stating that only library staff can read stories moving forward. And this is going to have a ripple effect on other programs, notably Rainbow Reading Hour will now be canceled. This is a program where storytime readings were in Spanish, Navajo, and ASL. I think this is something that's really important for CODA to be involved in. I know well, I don't think I have to convince y'all that representation matters. But I think it'd be interesting to maybe Chris, or I'd be happy to take the lead on this, to just reach out to the library and inquire more information. Like, are they going to reinstate these kinds of programs in a different way? Like, what was the reasoning behind the new policy? And just seeing if there's going to be other programs that replace this Rainbow Reading Hour, or if it's just completely out. And then the last piece was the oral history project. So we did run into more difficulties in obtaining approval. As reported last month, we did write back to library leadership addressing their concerns around housing the collection, and why representation and visibility matters. But unfortunately, they decided that it will absolutely not be housed by the library. Fortunately, we were already in contact with the Arizona Memory Project, and they have the resources to support us and house the oral history collection. So we have edited the consent form to include Arizona Memory Project policies, and so it's back under Flagstaff Library Leadership's plate, awaiting approval. Okay, so those are the three big ones. I think the one I wanted to make sure that we talked about was the library story time hour. I think, like I said, it's concerning that storytime readings in Spanish, Navajo, and ASL, as well as drag story hour, will be canceled. And just wondering if that's something that we can do something about, or, you know, raise concerns.
Commissioner Darling?
Yes, I don't know. How can we support raising concerns around this? It's obviously problematic and intends to silence the drag voices, and the ripple effect is dangerous. What can we do?
Commissioner Darling, is that a question for me or is that for the group at large?
Anyone?
I'd be happy to give a short explanation of, I guess, the possible actions the commission can take on something like this, under the mandate that the commission has. So as I mentioned in a presentation earlier, the Commission on Diversity Awareness is meant to be advisory and educational. So just as any other entity could in the public, generally speaking, you can request information from the city, kind of like we did with the anti-camping ordinance with the police department. The commission kind of gave me direction to reach out to them to find more information. So you could do that and something like this, and I could reach out to the library administration and see if I can find some of that documentation or see what their response is to those inquiries. If you have specific questions, that's helpful. If you want more information, that's probably the best way to go about it. If you're looking to take action based off anything, the advisory role of the Commission on Diversity Awareness is probably your best option, where you'd be able to either through our council liaison who's with us today, or through a letter to all of council, you could say anything you would like about the programs and make any recommendations that the commission agrees on. That would have to come through a formal vote, which could not happen today because it's not agendized. And you could also request that I put this on an agenda in the future so that it can be discussed deliberately as its own item. I think those are essentially the three options you have that I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you. I would request more information so we could determine how best to proceed. I of course won't be here for the January meeting. But I do want to know how to support or create some change here.
Okay. And I see that Commissioner Sanchez put in the chat some things here, and I want to just say them out loud because I know that the recording doesn't capture the chat. And then,
yeah, sorry, Chris.
oh,
I had I verbalized them when I was
yeah,
going through my updates, and so I just wanted to like condense them
okay.
into all in one.
If you, and they were largely included in that, so I just wanted to make sure that because I've noticed that when I do the recordings, they don't pop up. I wanted to make sure that that those were all said, and yeah.
I can repeat them in case like maybe anybody wants to edit them or adjust them. I think my main questions were just like, what's the reasoning behind the new policy? Particularly because I do feel like a lot of money has already been spent on onboarding volunteers. They have to go through fingerprinting and background checks. And so getting rid of having volunteers participate in this program just seemed to me a little bit, I had questions. So I want to know what the reasoning was behind the new policy. Just thinking through how will the library ensure it remains inclusive if it's not going to have these programs? And then just thinking about like, will these programs be replaced with other programs, or are we just completely canceling any story hours in a language other than English? And I think the other piece that I didn't write down, but was something I was thinking about, was just, if we're tied down to library staff only can participate, like what are the demographics of the library staff? If that is, the only people who are going to be able to do readings, are they then going to start programs to diversify their library staff? Yeah, sorry, that went off on a tangent, but those were kind of the things I was thinking about.
I want to ask, because I think I might have missed it, or just to be clear, who made the final decision to cancel all story hours? Was it a librarian or the library board?
The library, so Felicia had submitted a programming proposal for Drag Story Hour last month.
Yeah.
The proposal was denied, and the reasoning was that the library has a new policy that only library staff can read stories moving forward, which then impacts Rainbow Reading Hour, which was where story time was in Spanish, Navajo, and ASL.
Who was that denier?
The library administration. So
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
And
I'll note as
wait-
well, just because our library is structured a little differently than other ones are. We don't have a library board in Flagstaff. Our library is a joint effort between the city and the county. So it kind of falls, I think, equally as its own like division in both those organizations. I don't know exactly where it falls in the county side of things, just because I'm a city employee, but it's kind of a joint division of both us and the county. So, and then there's no boards. It would eventually, the lawmaking bodies, I think, would be city council and the library and the county board of supervisors. Although I don't know what were to happen if they were ever to give like conflicting direction or anything like that. I can look into those things for you as well, though. I'm not that familiar with all of that authority, I guess.
Thank you.
Any further working group updates?
I can give one shortly on a different topic. And that's that you may have seen our logo working group, which has one member, which is Commissioner Sanchez as well, serving on it. We have reached 3 final designs, or just about final designs, for a new city logo. We sent those out to the public, I think 2 days ago, through social media and whatnot. And we have a poll open right now through January 11th, where we're soliciting feedback on which design is the community's favorite and what they like and don't like about each of them. So if you have an interest in that, please feel free to take that poll or to share it with others. I can say it's doing pretty well. Yesterday in the morning, I checked and it had over 500 responses in the first 24 hours, which is pretty substantial. But I want to invite to try to keep those numbers to get them to go as high as we can. Thanks.
Great. I also saw it on the news. Okay. Updates from Councilwoman House?
The only thing I can think of is, and Chris, I don't know if you can send out that message that I forwarded. There's a group it's a medical office that is doing an MLK Day of Service project next year, building tiny libraries to go on the east side of Flagstaff. And they were looking for community support in different ways. And so I let the primary contact I had know that I would share that with HODA, BPAC, and by request, the Commission on Inclusive Living. Yeah, I don't know exactly what opportunities to support that look like. She shared some kind of general details about needing help with actually, assembling some of the tiny library kits when they get them. And I have no idea how complicated that is. But also I know that they were soliciting book donations and things like that. Or even if you just knew of a business on the east side that would be willing to or interested in partnering with them to host one of the tiny libraries. They started off planning for just 2, I believe, and because of the interest that was expressed when she posted that, they might be up in that number to 4 to 6. And it sounds like 3 were already claimed. So yeah, just wanted to share that information with you all in case anyone wanted to get more information and possibly help out with that.
All right, thank you. Any further updates from our staff liaison, Chris Rode?
Thank you. Yes, I have 2 that will be brief though, because I've been talking quite a bit this afternoon already. The first one is that, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, Commissioner Jane has resigned from the commission, which means that we will have a vacancy that needs to be filled. So we will go through a process shortly to open up for applications. So if you know of anybody that you would like to encourage to apply, please keep an eye out for that. I will send out further information once we have that vacancy posted, so that you all can forward that to anybody that you may want to. And then the other item I wanted to update you all on was we had a presentation last month on inclusive wayfinding from Hunter Herbert. And I just wanted to confirm that I did put him in touch with Rose, and she was actually here for part of this meeting as well, who's the staff liaison for our Indigenous Commission. And they are going to look to continue that discussion in that body. So hopefully that project continues moving on, and I will keep you apprised of how that conversation turns out.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
And any further discussion about the agenda for the next meeting? I know we've had a few different comments about what we might want to add in January.
Yeah, and I'll just note right now the 2 items that I expect right at this moment to be on the agenda will be a discussion with our police chief who wanted to come back, and that will probably be agendized just as a discussion with him as opposed to being on a specific topic to allow it to be broad. And then we'll continue the discussion on the rainbow pavement exhibits, hopefully after we've had some discussions with other community group folks, and we'll see where that goes. Anything else that anybody would like me to agendize or like to be added for next month or a future month?
I'm assuming that if you were to get answers to the questions on the library front, they would go on the agenda.
Yes, I could, if I have any kind of a substantive update on that, I will agendize it. I cannot promise it'll be next month, but with the direction to go and seek those answers, I want to at least do the best job I can to have substance to talk about. And if there's still things that feel outstanding, I may push that out one additional month. again, for example, with this anti-camping ordinance, that took a few months to get enough answers where I felt confident bringing it back. So I usually take my own discretion to bring it back when I feel like I have enough. But if you would like, I can come back next month either way. But otherwise, I would kind of look to use my own discretion about when the right time to have that conversation is, again, based on the information I receive. Does that work, Commissioner Sanchez? Okay.
Anything further on the agenda? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll go ahead and motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Commissioner Sanchez here.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. And with that, we adjourn at 3:11 p.m.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great holiday season.